Welcome to Carefree and Conscious, paranormal and profound authors with stunning true stories. If you like this type of content, be sure to subscribe. I'm your host, Susanne Wilson, the Carefree Medium and Intuition Educator. Today on Carefree and Conscious, becoming a trance channeler and healer with our guest, Melanie Aguirre. She is an author, quantum hypnotherapist, researcher, and educator, as well as the visionary behind the Quantum Disclosure Project. You'll find her journey to be at once heart-shattering and extraordinarily healing. She was paralyzed for 3 years and went through what many would call quite a long dark night of the soul. And now one of the entities that she channels is Anubis. In addition to her healing work, Melanie is deeply involved in community building and spiritual education. She hosts events and she has written several books, including Revelations 1, The Beginning, Revelations 2, Evolutions, Behind the Mask, Unveiling Human Trafficking, and Blood of the Covenant, Unveiling Catholic Ritual Abuse. And now Carefree and Conscious, Becoming a Trance Channeler and Healer with Melanie Aguirre. Melanie Aguirre, welcome to Carefree and Conscious.
Hey, how are you doing today? Thank you for having me.
Happy you're here. Yay! We met quite a while ago, well, actually a couple of years ago at the Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles. And it was really nice meeting you. And you've had me on your podcast, on your YouTube channel, which is great. And now I get to ask you questions.
Yes, I'm really excited. I'm in the hot seat now.
Yeah, let's do this because I'm very excited about actually a lot of things. I'm excited about the extraterrestrial connection. I'm excited about the hypnosis and the regressions, channeling, so many things. Just can you give me an idea of how you were growing up and then how you got into massage therapy as like one of the first steps in your being a light worker, and how did this progress? Where did it start and how did it go?
Yeah, it's going to be quite a deliverance. So let's start from my childhood. And I was an awakened child. My mind and my thoughts were on the bigger questions, the deeper questions of the world and how things were run and who did this and who's in charge of that. So my mind was more on a grand scale, and just like the other kids, when you're asked what do you want to be when you grow up, that was something that I didn't figure out until probably my 30s. Even still now, it's figuring out, okay, what do I really want to be when I grow up, quote unquote. But as a child, I was very interested in sci-fi and paranormal and anything outside of the realm of the, like magic. It was very intriguing to me and it lured me in. I love extraterrestrials. And so as I grew older, I realized that my connection I thought was normal, but it kind of unfolded into this pathway of learning and discovering that even my childhood, I was being abducted and taken, quote unquote, for or borrowed for psychic abilities classes on these craft with other students that were also in the same realm or field as myself. And so as I started learning, okay, let me back up. Through the childhood, I kind of pushed it away because people in my life were saying, well, that's not real. And so as I got older, I started school as a massage therapist first. And then I went through that program and realized that when I was touching people, I was able to feel everything going on in their body. And I was picking up energy about themselves and their life. And I wasn't sure what to do with that. And so whenever I had realized that maybe I should start protecting my own energy, that's when I stepped into Reiki. And it wasn't really because I wanted to give Reiki to other people, but it was so that I could manage the energy and learn what's going on. And so I simultaneously was doing massage therapy and then Reiki. And then I went to school for medical assisting. And then when I was in that realm, it gave me a larger insight of the human body and the anatomy. And so then my mind was in the energy field and the human, like physical, anatomical field and science. And so I felt like I had a good balance of understanding of, when we go to the doctor, it's not just about giving you a prescription. It's going to be more underlying of what's going on in your life at that time that caused that reaction or disease or suffering to start. And so my mind was already in the field of self-healing because I grew up with so much trauma. And I mean, I was trafficked and I had a lot of abuse inside and outside of the home on different realms. And so for me, it was hard to go to a counselor or a therapist time and time again and reopen the box, right? Having to explain and introduce yourself. So for me, what I did is I took the Reiki and the knowledge of the body and energy work to start picking at myself and figuring out, what is really going on? What's this programming? What is this feeling? And then questioning myself, when did it start? Finding the root of the problem. And that's when Reiki really helped me a lot, is to do that psychic surgery type of energy work on myself. And so I was already clearing timelines before I even, which the next step would have been a hypnotherapist for me, because then I was T-boned. I was in a car accident that left me permanently disabled from the waist down. And at the time, I was working as a massage therapist, and I was also working in the film industry. So I was constantly on my feet, even up to 12 to 17 hours a day sometimes, depending on the film, or if I was doing massage therapy, it would just drain me in different ways. So when the car accident happened, I didn't realize that I asked for that. And the way that I asked for that is because I asked for a different path, because I was unhappy as a massage therapist. I was unhappy with my car. I was unhappy with everything. So I sought out for different types of natural healing. I thought, well, maybe I could be a chiropractor. Maybe I could be an acupuncturist. Maybe I could, do whatever. But I could not find anything that was pleasing my soul. So then I found hypnosis, and that is what guided me to healing myself after the car accident, because the car accident left me permanently disabled from the waist down for 3 years. And it just kept getting worse because it started out from my low back, which, down to my toes, and then it started creeping up my back. So I couldn't even get out of bed. So I literally had to surrender to anything, anything that God would present to me on my path to shine some light on, this darkness that I thought I was in. But from there, when I found the hypnosis, I learned that I was on the wrong path and I was not where I was supposed to be. So I learned that my true path and my true purpose here is to not only be a massage therapist, but to help millions of people in different other ways, such as writing books or creating events, projecting my own psychic abilities and talents, such as channeling. And so it's really just been this like a lotus flower, it's really just opens and develops time and time again. And it's been, let's see, the car accident happened in 2015, and my first hypnosis session healing, it was in 2018. And so it's been 2018, it's 2004 now, that I'm still learning about myself and about my connection with extraterrestrials, which goes even deeper. So at this point, our conversation can go any direction depending on
Gosh.
on what you want.
Questions. There's so many questions, so many, as you said, there's so many opportunities of things to talk about here. But I want to go back to, is it true that you were told that you were not going to be a functioning adult again, like not walking and just that you were supposed to, in air quotes, just be paralyzed from the waist down for life?
Right. And that's true because the doctors, I went to a massage therapist, Reiki practitioners, I did water therapy, I went to the gym to try to strengthen my core, to try that route. Nothing was working. And I felt like whatever I did, it was making it worse. And so it's like pushing against the grain, it's like pushing on your toothache. You're like, oh, it hurts. Like, yeah, it hurts. Stop doing that.
Yeah, and Western medicine, raise my hand for edit. Geez. And Western medicine wants to, I know therapy is important. Physical therapy is very important, but it can also be like torture. Did you do all the Western medicine stuff first and then do complementary therapies, or was it at the same time, or how did you do it?
Sure. So I first started with massage therapy and physical therapy. Um, I felt like it was all kind of coinciding over
Yeah.
the length of time. Because if, the massage therapy wasn't working and then the Reiki, it kind of helped, but it didn't really do much. It was still there. And the doctors told me, the specialist at UNM, University of New Mexico, of neuroscience, he said, I hate to say this, but you don't qualify for surgery because we can't find the issue. They did x-rays, they did MRIs, and they still couldn't find the issue. And it's because your nervous system doesn't show up on those types of systems.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
so they couldn't find the problem. And so I did even try injections in my low back,
Yeah.
and that made it worse. And
Great.
so it got to the point to where, and man, after that, it got worse. And I mean, it got worse after that. And so it
You
got to
know,
the point to where he said, I'm sorry, but you're going to be permanently disabled for the rest of your life. And if you become incontinent, just give us a call.
oh,
That's those were his exact words. And so
okay. And which is terrifying. At that point, were you thinking, I wish that my ET friends would just come and pick me up and take me away? Did you, at this point, as you're going through this, did you have an awareness that you were an abductee?
that's a really good question. And the thing that was coming through as you were asking that question is I got this vision that I had my first ET UFO sighting in, I believe, June or July of 2015, which was months before my car accident. And I was open to the idea of extraterrestrials, but in 2018 is when I quote unquote stumbled upon a spiritual conference called Stargate to the Cosmos. And I kind of walked into that as a volunteer, and I kid you not, it felt like I was home. I had recognized the speakers and the presenters and the vendors and everyone there. Give me a second. Yeah, so when I had went to that conference, I really felt connected. And after that conference and after that sighting, my whole world changed. And I mean, it changed. I was dreaming about extraterrestrials almost every night. And now that I look back, they weren't dreams, they were memories that were being unlocked. And so also during that time, I was connecting myself to, well, who are those beings in that craft that I saw? And so that's when I was using hypnosis to learn more about my connection to these beings that I saw, which I learn now are family, which is a whole nother topic, that kind of brings in, myself as a human or hybrid. So I have the understanding that, we all are seeded from different extraterrestrial lineages. But there is, a special type of breed out there. And I really feel like I'm one of those that were created to deliver the messages and information that I do through the channeling that I do, which is why I'm here, because it wasn't just the car accident on why I sought out my path and purpose. It was because I was also done with the struggles and the suffering of the mundane and the densities of this planet. And so I was seeking out more of an awareness and consciousness out there because I asked for it. I said, please tell me why I'm here. And they were gentle enough to reciprocate that. And so once I started seeing that communication, then I started really acknowledging that true existence.
When and how did the channeling begin?
Sure. So the channeling for myself, I feel I've always been connected with my own intuition. And then I started connecting with spirits who passed away. I read this book by a psychic, and once I started reading that, then I started realizing, oh, I have these abilities. And the same with your book. When I read your book, it's like, yep, that's right. And so for me, it started with just having the ability to be a psychic, but not really utilizing the tool so much. And then I started doing the hypnotherapy. When I went under regression for my first time, I connected with Anubis from ancient Egypt. And not only did I connect with him as a in that space, but it was more of a connection of him as my counterpart. And so I was Anubis in that past life regression, right? So it was me who had the chest like man and the head like dog that was described in the session. And so once I started learning about these fragments of different timelines that create us as a whole that we are now, just like the leaves of a petal, you've got these different leaves that are an extension of yourself. And so once I started learning about the connection to Anubis, it was just more of an acknowledgement. But once I started going back time and time again and saying that connection with Anubis, I realized there was a stronger connection that I couldn't quite put my finger on or identify. But then I started channeling Anubis with the intention to bring him through, because I noticed that he was wanting to come through more, if that makes sense. It was more of it's more of like a ping, like a telepathic ping, it's like and I know you understand. And so what I did as a hypnotherapist, because I didn't want to rely on someone to put me under, right, to connect with him. So what I did is I taught myself how to go into trance instantly within seconds. And that was my goal. My goal was 10 seconds. And then I was like, if I can get under 10 seconds, that would be awesome. And so I took it upon myself to teach myself how to channel and put myself under. And then he started coming through. And that in itself is very, very powerful. The energy is much different because, as you can see, I'm pretty soft-spoken. But when Anubis comes through, the whole energy shifts of the room completely. And then I started channeling the Galactic Federation, Tall Whites, and interdimensionals. So I can also channel in Arcturians, Pleiadians, praying mantis, Sasquatch, your loved ones, or elf very whichever.
It's like once they know there's this really good station to tune into, they keep coming back.
Yeah, I call it a party line. I love to call it a party line because they really do start to kind of peek in and stand in line. And
Well, you have a good reference. If, if Anubis is like, yeah, she's cool, and he's one of the most ancient documented Egyptian gods, and isn't he also said to be in charge of the cycles of life with a emphasis on leading people into the afterlife too?
yes,
And I understand from you that he has a sense of humor and that he will pull out a curse word once in a while for emphasis. Are you in light trance or deep trance when you do this? Are you not hearing yourself or not knowing what's going on or catching a little bit?
good question. So when I go in trance, I like to lay down to give myself and them the real opportunity. I want to give myself the opportunity to get out of my own way. And that's probably how I like to do it because that's how I taught myself. And it also gives them the chance to come in fully and use my body for clearing or activations, light language, diffusing energy, especially if there's clearing going on or blockages going on, because I can do that for myself and other people. So when I'm in that state mentally and consciously, I'm aware of what's coming in. I like to say it's like sitting in the backseat of my own car. I'm aware of what's going on around. I can see it, I can hear it, I can feel it. And I also have the ability to filter out. And I've done that with him before, and even the Federation. It's like, okay, we can't use that word with this person. And so they're like, okay, we can't use that word. Let's find a different word to use. But I always record everything because it's like a dream. You are going to forget over time what happened and what was said. And so in that sense, it's like living and being in a dream, but you are consciously aware, very lucid dream, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because you're holding so much energy and such a different frequency, especially when you start to get into the interdimensionals, because they're coming from so many different frequencies. I would think, what do you have to do to be in shape to do this?
That's a good question. Sometimes I prepare if I know that something's coming up, almost like an appointment. You're like, okay, it's coming up. And then consciously, I'm preparing myself or unconsciously preparing myself, even resting, getting lots of water. Um, I'm not very extrovert type of personality, so I'm not going to be out in public a lot. I tend to kind of just stay in. So, and retreat because I think that if I am overlapping and draining myself in that way, but it's not really draining myself, as we all are empaths, we can pick up energy from other people. So it's more of just kind of keeping my white shirt clean until, the event or appointment is arranged. So I like to just, not overthink it. But then again, sometimes a channeling session can happen without any present awareness or knowledge. Sometimes they'll just kind of set it up that way. It's like, oh, I'm going to go to this event. Oh, and then it's like, now I find myself channeling, but it's not as if it's like a party trick or party favor in that sense. It's not for entertainment purposes. But for example, I went to a CE5 event, which was directly specifically to, heart, mind, body, soul coherence to connect with our extraterrestrial friends. And since I channel, someone asked me, would you mind channeling our ET friends? And of course, I was ecstatic and gave them a treat. And so another event, which is a fine example of me kind of walking into like almost like spot walking into a spider web. You don't really see it coming. I went to a friend's house and they asked me if I would be interested in assisting a soul that had took his own life and crossing over. And I said, sure, but the best way that I know how to do that would be go into trance. And I did. And so through that route, I was able to connect with that being and even its evolution and its personality and who he was, messages for his family. And then when he was ready, he was able to walk to the light. And so in that case, it's just kind of one of those things, like opening the door for someone,
Yeah.
when you're both walking into the convenience store or the mall or wherever you're going, it's just something of a gesture that I like to extend, and it doesn't drain me, it doesn't make me tired. It feels
That's
like
great.
it feels like I took a nap. And so I feel like also when I'm laying down, it 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 is in that sense, giving me relief and I'm not having to do much.
Does your back hurt now?
My back,
Hmm.
I don't think it does.
Do you think maybe you had like a molecular
Oh,
re
from the accident? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if so I've been hearing about molecular rearrangements, especially Brucerin, my Arcturian guide, has talked about that off and on for several years now. I would have like a reading for a client. I would say you're getting a molecular upgrade, and he's calling it a rearrangement. Like they're doing things like that to help us contain our new frequency as we work on holding more light. As we work on our own ascension, the physical body has to change to keep up with our activities and our new frequency. And I was just wondering if you ever feel like you're still being worked on.
Constantly, constantly. And it's all within the mind because after the accident, it wasn't like flipping a switch and I was healed overnight. It took some time because keep in mind, my nerves were shifted completely in my body. They weren't on the right side anymore. They were shifted to the left side. And
Yeah.
so in the hypnosis session, when I learned about my true path and purpose and I was on the wrong path, my nerves switched back to the right path, back to where they're supposed to be in the session. And it was painful. It was
Wow.
it was pleasurable, but it was painful because I knew it was healing and something, positive was taking place. But after that, my body, I had to take time to re-strengthen my core and my legs because I wasn't hiking anymore as much as I did. I wasn't, mobile as much as I was. And so my body, I really had to rebuild my whole body. I lost muscle mass and weight. And so when my body was healing, they said, you're supposed to be a hypnotherapist. Well, guess what? When I went back and tried to do other occupations other than being a hypnotherapist, guess what would happen? The nerves in my leg and my back would start to twinge and like it's like ringing a bell. They're like, nope, you're not supposed to be on that path. And so I'd say, okay. So my body was talking to me. It was communicating with me and it was reminding me that you're not supposed to do that. So since then, I've really jumped in with both feet with this healing and practice because I'm not meant to do anything else. So and you're right, it's constantly shifting and growing. And even after we die, even after the body dies and the soul transcends, your your DNA, your cellular memory still carries on. So it's a constant growth that's just fascinates me.
What do you think it was about you? Is it because you're their family that attracted the beings to start coming to you and start taking you to where they were when you're a child? And do you think this is part of a pre-birth plan? Do you think it's part of what you agreed to maybe after? you incarnated, or do you think it's just opportunistic?
Well, I definitely don't think it's just, you know, picking the short end of the straw or anything like that, or flipping a coin of yes or no. But I really think and this is a great question because I know the answer to this, and it's taking me time to research this within myself because I've had these same questions. It's like, okay, now I have these abilities, and this is what I can do with them, and this is why I'm here. But why am I really, who am I really outside and away from this human avatar and current sense of self? And so for me, I utilized hypnosis. I asked a friend to regress me, and with these questions of, well, who am I and why am I here? Because it came up in another session that I stepped down into this role. And I wanted to know more of that. And so what they mean by that, and anyone can watch this video, it is on my YouTube channel, but it does explain, and it does have clips of this specific session that I'm speaking of on why I am here. And so the recording on YouTube, it's the clip of my actual hypnosis session, and I'll share it with you.
Yeah,
But
I'll link that on the YouTube version of this interview too. I think people should see that. So who am I and why am I here? That could be the Pandora's box.
yes, it
What
really
made you
did.
so brave?
I think first accepting the work, right? Accepting the mission, accepting why I'm here. And it's a lot of responsibility, And then once you really accept that, then you can figure out, okay, well, what's the bigger question behind that? And so for me, I learned through my tall white friends that they saw me on their mothership craft when I was young. I'm thinking maybe 3. And they said that without effort, they knew that I would be the one to deliver the messages. And what I learned previous to that, so not only was it an agreement in this time, but it was also an agreement, as you said, as a contract, a pre-life arranged contract. And the information that came through was that I'm an ambassador that stepping into his own game, that is here to assist humanity on this evolutionary path of growth and expansion, and that they went through lineages to create this blueprint that I am, because they said that with the work that I do through chance channeling and the energy that I'm delivering and clearing and activating, that they said that there's only one role that can be filled, and that I got this role. So I don't know if it's very honorable. But is it also that shit? Is it, and excuse my language, is it that shitty job that no one wants? Because it is so much, and it can be a load, to take. And so through my bravery, shall I say, of stepping into that role, I've just had to embrace the darkness and lightness that comes with it as I learn and expand and grow, because it's quite fascinating. I mean, my blood type is rare, it's AB negative. So I think there's like 1 or 2 or 3% of the world that has that. And I have psychic kinesis ability, so I can move things without touching them. So I feel like the more that I practice and sit with myself, the more I'm going to see. And like you said, it's a Pandora's box. It just, it keeps going.
Yeah, a lot of people will ask, what's my soul's purpose? But when you flat out, you know that you're going into a deep hypnosis and you're going to be in touch with something that you've been in touch with before, don't quite understand, and you ask, who am I? Why am I here? You better be ready for the answers to that and not want to debate it or argue it, but simply take it in. So, okay, how do we get from feeling the body get better and change and adjusting your work to align with your soul and personality or getting aligned here? How do we get into Anubis? Does Anubis just show up in the channeling session? And how have the communications changed over time, or have they changed?
Good question. So with Anubis, he's somewhat he's reachable. You know, you have someone's phone number, you can call them, but he's not always readily available. I feel like that would be something that I would have to say, okay, because that's a bigger energy, right? It's like putting on a size 12 shoe and you wear a size 7. Like
I,
that's a
I
little too to
personally would
fill.
feel like a dick for just asking Anubis to show up to my trance session. I don't feel the calling. I don't know. I would have to like hear like from 5 different sources, my team or whatever. Oh yeah, yeah, this energy wants to make contact. You know, how does this happen?
An example is because when I went to Alaska, I got asked to do a channeling to read some ancient artifacts.
Okay.
I thought the tall whites and the Galactic Federation were going to come through, but absolutely not. It was Anubis because he had more of the ancient connection and information that was needed. Even though the Galactics were still present and available, he was the one that was like, step aside, I've got this. Um, but he can come through. And so it is quite interesting because he is very direct. He's very cut and dry. He's not going to give you a deliverance that you can't handle. And for example, if someone says, "Can you help me with something?" He's going to determine, are you really needing help or are you just kind of being lazy? And so he can pick up on that and he can correct you and say, this is what you can do, but I'm not going to do it for you. And he can redirect people on their path. And if their person's not listening, he has patience, but he doesn't have much patience if someone's just choosing not to look at it, right? Again, you can give a horse water, but with the galactics, they're more gentle. They are very compassionate. And not to say that Anubis is not.
Oh, yeah.
He,
Okay.
he
I'm
really is.
getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. My own team, Brucera the Arcturian, is to the point and won't come on demand, just whenever. And the others are like, oh, we love these dear humans, our reckless, beloved humans. And so there's like this personality difference.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
did how do they develop personalities, the ETs, when they're not having human experiences? What else do you think is at work here?
That's a great question. So through the time that I've been channeling the extraterrestrials, I've noticed, because I go back and watch the videos and I'm noticing patterns here. What they do is they tune in to the individual persons or collective persons that are there. So what they do is they tap into their vocabulary. They tap into their personality. They tap into what they like, because if they're going to deliver a message, they want it to be on a level that these persons can learn how to resonate with, right? And if there's humor with it, then it kind of lightens the load of that deliverance and truth that's being given to you. So they are very specific, even with telepathy. I get visions and I hear stuff and I see stuff. And so if the person is not speaking up or if the person is holding back, they pick up on that and they're going to comment on that, you know, and it's really funny. For example, um, I went to this sacred site with my friend and they had picked up that he had a question. So they're like, oh, you have a question for us. And he was kind of taken back, like, oh, like, yeah, I kind of do. And so they gave him a chance to ask his question, but he didn't speak it out right away because internally it caught him off guard that he was trying to then formulate the question. Okay, how do I answer? How do I ask that question now? Before he could get a word out, they started answering his question. And then he was taken back again. And he's like, well, how did you do that? And it's like, well, we have this highly advanced skill, where we can tap into other people's consciousness. As we know, it's telepathy. But they have a really deep connection with other persons. And so not only can they tap into their consciousness or personality or interest, but we can also look at the Akashic records, their abilities, their path and purpose, their star lineage, their blocks and their patterns and activations or anything that needs to happen.
Well, and speaking of tapping in, the disclosure project that you have and the website that you have, you seem to really be tapped into truth telling. And we're receiving assistance from the unseen world in coming to terms with who we are as humanity and what it's going to take to get to a level of compassion for ourselves and for others. So, can you tell us about what is the disclosure project for? And it's quantum disclosure project, right? What's the exact name of your website?
Yes, so it's Quantum Disclosure Project, and the website is quantumdisclosureproject.com.
And
And so the idea behind my work is really to provide disclosure on not just the physical realm. Like there's a lot of people that want to hear that extraterrestrials exist, and that's just their focused tunnel vision. But for me, I'm more of, let's look at the other facets of like what really also needs to be disclosed. And truth, you're right, the truth, it's revealing those revelations that have always been hidden from us, that have been swept under the rug. So to reveal sacred knowledge, lost insight, sacred wisdom of things that have been changed or hidden from us over time. So what it's kind of like I'm doing is, we have these archaeological sites on Earth in our physical realm, right? We go to these dig sites to figure out our history. But what I like to do is look at our history on more of the quantum multidimensional level. It's like my bigger questions are, what's our correlation with extraterrestrials? Like what is their beginning? How were they created? How was our universe created, and like how far does it really go? And so my mind is not just in this, marble of this earth that we are currently on, but my questioning goes and expands quite extensively, more of, what's hidden in our DNA, and, what are those notes and tunes that, created us, because we are the songs of the universe, right? We are the souls. We are the children that create this expression of the, human capabilities. I mean, that in itself is a different realm. And so once we can comprehend that we're not the only humans in this universe or even existence, we were put here, so I want to disclose and look at everything on many levels.
and you've put your work uh, where your desires are because you have, is it 4 books that you have? I'm counting 4 books. Two about revelations, Revelations 1, the beginning, Revelations 2, evolutions, and then 2 books about human trafficking
Yeah.
and ritual abuse. Um, Talk about disclosure and the need for people to face what they don't want to hear about, don't want to talk about, and want to pretend it's a conspiracy. How how do you feel
writing these books contributes not just to other people's understanding, but to their healing. In whichever books you want to talk about, it just feels like you're on this mission to help heal as many people as possible. So talk about that if you would.
Yes. So Revelations 1, so the Revelations is more of a series. And so I will be working on a Revelations 3, but Revelations 1, the beginning, looks at different aspects of our beginning. As you know, there's different religions, there's different beliefs, different programs out there as we celebrate and continue. But I want to look at those different timelines of the beginning, such as the beginning of the dinosaurs or the Big Bang or Jesus or Nephilim, things of those lines that kind of bend our perception of reality and what we've been taught. And so Revelations 2, Evolutions, looks at different aspects of our evolution as a whole, as a spirit, or beings coming to planet Earth. And how did we evolve here? How did Mother Earth evolve? How did the universe evolve and grow and expand? And so in Evolutions, you'll see even information about ancient sites and how they were created or evolved. One thing you might like about the second book is that we look at Earth's evolution from Earth's perspective, which is super cool. And so funny thing about that is she thought humans were kind of cute and fun at first, but then she basically said we're like fleas on a dog at this point. And then the human trafficking, that really puts inside, of course, the topic, and then the ritual abuse. And the fifth book I just started last night. It's called Breaking the Silence, about education, about school shootings, and the truth that we need to face about what's really going on. Because that's a topic that it's right in front of our face, but we don't talk about it. And we only come together around it when it happens, when it's too late. And so what I do in these books is I want to shine light on the backdrop, what's going behind the scenes, what's the history of that? How did it get started? And why have we become so silenced to not discuss those topics? It's shoved under the rug constantly. Again, I wrote the human trafficking book because I was human trafficked. And this might sound crazy, but I had a family member, my grandmother. She said, I know it's happening, but what can I do about it? And so in that sense, exactly, in that sense, we see the light is on, but how do we work with that? And so these books are really to educate people on how can we use this as a tool to learn from? How can we help someone that we might know is in this situation? How can we educate someone that might not even be aware of this situation? But it also supports the victims or families that have been through it or are in it. So there's resources and there's a lot of different aspects on how to support someone, but it's mainly just education and wisdom on, again, that background. And there is disclosure in those books because I want to know who's in charge of this, who's benefiting from this, so there is disclosure in there as well as education and support and resources. But I feel it helps the families because when we have a loved one, even if we're not in a traumatic experience, if we have a loved one that passes away and we're so connected to, that can hinder our everyday lives. We can become depressed and get knocked out of our own routines and cycles, and we can fall backwards on our path. And so when something so big happens and tragically, that impacts the community or even the nation, you're suppressing many conscious levels of consciousness at that point. And so I feel my personal beliefs might get in the way of, why I think this is happening on a spiritual war type of level, if you get my drift here. But I really want these books to help the souls that have passed and the souls that are currently struggling here to release and relieve and uplift that death density that we're feeling and struggling with in our heart chakras, in our solar plexus, in our crown chakras, and even our throat, because we don't speak up when we're suppressed. We don't heal when we're suppressed. And so if we can just, put the seeds out there a little bit and show that, you can grow flowers even after a storm, there's a lot of souls that it can help at many levels, multidimensional quantum levels, which makes me happy, which is why I do it.
That is so beautifully said. I think I need to stop there. That is the final thought right now. We can still grow flowers in a storm. And you have so many amazing messages of empowerment at a time when people may be feeling disenfranchised, or they may feel like, why even bother? And problems are too big to even do anything. And you've just given all these reasons why we not only have to push forward, but why we will have so many rewards when we do. And it's like the rising tide lifts all boats. So I'll tell you that this is really good stuff. I now understand exactly why your project is Quantum Disclosure Project, and it has so many levels to this. How do people work with you? Are you still able with your schedule to do one-to-ones with folks, and what are you offering?
Yeah, so I do offer one-to-ones. That can be in person or online. I always recommend in person. You're just going to get more out of it on a physical level. Not to say that you won't long distance, but I always recommend in person. Group sessions are fine. You can find me typically at the Conscious Life Expo or on my website, YouTube, and I have many services. So not only trance channeling, but I can offer starseed support. So if anyone's going through struggling time through their awakening aware state and just need to understand, I can help them there. I do psychic abilities classes. I can do hypnosis regression. So there's many things that I do, but there's any way that anyone can get through me is probably my website, probably the most
You're
direct.
one to watch, Melanie. Melanie Aguirre, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Visit our website, carefreemedium.com, or find us on social media at Carefree Medium. Thanks for supporting Carefree and Conscious.